Now, the significance of other religions. Is it a leap of faith to go from belief in God to belief in the Christian God? Of course it is. And that's a perceptive question. Because many of the arguments I gave tonight were in keeping with my title. Do science and God mix? The word Christian didn't occur in the title, but it occurs in the Pascal lectures, and that will legitimize me answering this question, won't it? It is a leap. Of course it is a leap. You see, when we thought about these kind of arguments that I've advanced, these are only the beginning steps. Because the central Christian claim is that God has revealed himself. First of all, that God is a person and he's revealed himself. That's highly significant because, you see, you'll never get to know me if I don't reveal myself to you. You can put me under a scanning, tunneling microscope. You can take me to bits. You can analyze me chemically. You never get to know me unless I talk to you and reveal myself. And the central Christian claim is that God has revealed himself, and revealed himself in a very special way in the person of Jesus Christ, who I believe is God incarnate. Oh, it's a huge leap, and you'd want evidence for it, which is why I mentioned a moment ago Christianity makes such huge claims it needs colossal evidence. Of course it does. And the central piece of evidence that's accessible historically and experientially is that Christ claimed to rise from the dead. That means he's still alive. He claimed to die for people's sins, and as I've just said, you can test that. It's not only the historical evidence that convinces me. In the end, the proof of any pudding's in the eating. It's the experience that matches the history, so that you have two streams of evidence pouring in. You've got objective in a semi-kind of way and subjective in a semi-kind of way. Don't ask me to qualify those terms because they can be tendentious, but you gather what I mean, coming from history and so on that's outside of me and my experience which is inside of me. And so the question arises, finally, and I'll end with this, is what about other religions? That's a sensitive question, and it's a personal question. And I'm going to try and be as sensitive as I can in answering it by first saying that that's not the first question to ask. See, ladies and gentlemen, I was taught by my parents, and it cost them several bombs and the near death of my brother, that all men and women, no matter what they believe, are made in the image of God. That's why in Northern Ireland, a sectarian country known for its violence, he employed as equally as he could people from the divided community. That's how I grew up. That has stuck with me. So when I meet someone, and I have friends in virtually every religion you can name and none, it's very important that before we begin this debate and try to answer this question, that I regard them as infinitely valuable because they're made in the image of God. That's serious. Point number 2, they could shame me morally. We need to take this on board, you know, because from where I sit as a Christian, every man and woman, as I've just said, made in the image of God as a moral being. And if you read the Bible carefully, you'll find pagans sometimes shame the great people of faith. Abraham was shamed by a Pharaoh of Egypt, for instance. And sometimes we can misbehave where our non-Christian friends, because they are made in the image of God and have a conscience, can put us to shame. Thirdly, as you look around the world, you will find, as I was reminded last night in my debate with the Humanist of the Year in Canada in Toronto last night, he reminded us, quite correctly, that you will find the golden rule in every religion, philosophy, in history that we know. That's a fascinating thing. Lewis pointed that out in 1940 in appendix at the end of his book, The Abolition of Man. It has always interested me. And of course you would expect that if we're made in the image of God. Do unto others what you would they did unto you. So there's a common morality. These days it's very common to emphasize differences, and there are differences. But there's a very, very important common core, and we need to respect it. That's the fourth thing. Or was it the third thing? Doesn't matter. Bullet point thing. So having said all that, we now come to the differences. Now, I find it's usually atheists that get upset about the differences, not the people in the given religions, because they're proud of them. Many of my Muslim friends, when I explain what I'm about to explain to you, will stand up in public and say, you're dead right. You see, the fact is, if you leave Christianity out of it, certain forms of Hinduism that are polytheistic are never going to agree with Islam about the number of gods. Obviously, there are huge differences, and we'd be idiotic to pretend that they didn't exist, because the representatives of all those religions will tell you that they exist. Now let's take the three monotheistic Abrahamic religions. How would you distinguish between them? Well, now this is a personal question that I've been asked, so you'll forgive me. If you don't want to hear a personal answer, just go to sleep and I'll tell you when to wake up. I have Muslim friends. They do not believe that Jesus died. I have many Jewish friends. They believe he died, but he didn't rise. And I believe he both died and rose. You don't have to be a genius at logic to see that those three things cannot be simultaneously true. So how do you settle it? Well, the only way I know, you look for evidence. That's how you do it. And I can only be personal and say the evidence has convinced me that Jesus both died and rose. So you approach it historically. But there's another way of approaching it, ladies and gentlemen. Am I allowed to write on this blackboard? Oh, now I feel at home. And I'm not going to discuss mathematics. I'm going to discuss this question of the differences. It's very interesting to talk to people what they mean by a religion. And usually what they mean is that you've got some kind of an entrance gate, some initiation ceremony or something, and you're on the way. And often they use metaphors like the way, the eightfold path, and so on, to describe what happens after that entrance thing. So there's the way. You'll see I'm not a Picasso. And the way goes up and down, as we know in life. And most people, when I ask to tell me about their religion, say the way ends with another door. And at that door, there is a scale. And you know what that represents, of course. There is an evaluation, yes? And whatever is here, nirvana, heaven, whatever, depends on you passing. Well, I nearly said the final exam, so we might as well say this is the University of Waterloo. So let's go back to that analogy. You get into the university through some kind of entrance, I presume, and then you have got a university path, which does go up and down, you students, doesn't it? So you have people to help you along the path. There they are. You see, you've got these delightful professors, of whom we've heard some this afternoon. But although they teach you brilliantly and help you, they cannot guarantee that you get through your final exams. Have you discovered that yet? Because if you haven't, you'd better soon. So the basic principle of this whole thing is merit. Many people think that's what Christianity is. You've got a sort of ceremony getting you in, performed on an infant or something like this, and then you try and stay in the way, and you've got your teachers, and up comes the judgment, and if you're accepted, you get in, and if you're not, no. Here's the vast difference between Christianity and everything else. Christianity is not like that. It starts with a cross. And Christ makes the claim that if we trust him and receive him as Lord, we already have eternal life. And as he himself said, we shall not come into judgment, but have passed from death to life. So the acceptance comes where? Here, not here. That makes a colossal difference. You see, many people, when they talk to me about these important things, they say, you know, you are a very arrogant professor. You claim to know that God has accepted you. Yes, I do, ladies and gentlemen. But the secret of that is because it's not my merit, it's what Christ has done. Now try and follow me, because before you reject Christianity, and I've been asked about Christianity, you need to know what it says. And it says something so radical we could hardly dare believe it's true. It says you can be accepted at the beginning. So here I am in my little path up and down, you see. But I'm not living in order to gain acceptance. I'm living because I've got it. Now I want you to think of something. I met a girl my first day at university. Her name was Sally, and I've been married to her for 46 years. So I came to her one day, and I had a present. It was a Mrs. Beaton's cookery book. And I said, Sally, I would like to marry you. So here's a cookery book, and it's full of laws. And here's a law for making Apfelstrudel, which I like. Now, if you keep these laws for, let's say, 30 or 40 years, I'll think of accepting you. I wouldn't dream of accepting you now. Will you marry me? Why are you laughing, ladies and gentlemen? That's what millions of people think of God. You wouldn't insult your fellow human being by suggesting a relationship should be based on merit. Why is it we do it with God? And now perhaps we begin to understand how big this thing is. What is the secret of my little marriage? Well, she accepted me for some reason. I know why I accepted her. And that's what sets both of us free to live. I'm not desperately trying to gain her acceptance. I live to please her because I've got it. This is magnificent, you see. And it's why I'm a Christian and not something else. Because my final point is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. Christianity does not compete with any other religion at this level, because none of them offer me this. As simple as that. Good night, and thank you very much.
We welcome you to come back tomorrow evening, same time, same place. We'll try to get a third room so we can have more of you hear John's lecture. Thank you and good night.